Hey guys, Huzuni here. Just doing a follow-up video from my last showcase on how I create the turrets using the Create Aeronautics mod. And I wanted to do a follow-up just around general building of naval vessels and Create Aeronautics. Now, generally when people go and download the Create Aeronautics mod, it's to build airships. Now, these are wonderful, but it's also quite competent when it comes to building naval vessels, and a lot of the principles are pretty much the same. Just the design is a little bit more complex at times because instead of just building a bigger balloon and adding more lift, you sometimes need to fiddle around with the buoyancy a little bit more, so it can be somewhat challenging. I figured what I would do is just do a quick overview of the basics of flotation, some of the methods that I've used in my past builds. Now, I am by no means an expert. Um, it's definitely a work in progress, and I'm more interested in just building and designing the ships rather than getting the perfect floating vessel. However, I'm sure that once you've got the fundamentals down, you'll be on your way to mastering it in no time at all. So, that being said, what we'll do is go over the basics of flotation. Now, I've lost my wooden block here. So, what we need to be aware of when using the Create Aeronautics mod is that blocks have been classified into different weights. Now, probably aware of this, but we've got the super lightweight. This contributes barely anything to the overall flotation, and adding that to the block will do next to nothing. As you can see there, it hasn't even taken it all the way to the bottom. It's just hanging on the side there. So you've got your super lightweight. These are your fences, torches, half blocks, ladders, those types of things. They contribute next to nothing to the overall weight. Moving up from there, we have our light blocks. These are still buoyant, and to a certain degree can actually be used as a type of buoyancy, and to a certain degree can be used to build buoyant ships. But the downside there is that you're limited to the types of materials you can use, and if you want to then add ballast, you need to be very conscious of the way that you're designing your ship. Moving on from there, you've got your cobblestone or your blocks that are classified as heavy. These will just sink to the bottom immediately. You can still use these as a shipbuilding material if you're looking for something that is a bit more resilient or resistant as a material, particularly if you're building like naval vessels, like battleships. Generally, you probably don't want it to look like a wooden boat. If you're going for like your pirate aesthetic, wood is very easy to use there as a material. So if we use a block of wood here and we attach a block of cobblestone, you'll see if we drop that in the ocean here, it will sink to the bottom. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio there. So this brings me along to the next category here. So these are ways to add active flotation to your builds. So adds buoyancy. So if we look here, we've got the hot air balloon envelope, and this is not the best material. It also sinks. It's slightly better than wood. So if you hover over it, it adds 50% buoyancy. So what that means is that if you want to make one block of cobblestone float, you probably need to add at least two of these hot air balloon envelopes to offset that. So where can we go from here? Obviously there is levitite, which makes it float, right? So levitite just offsets the overall weight, and you can actually add quite a bit of it before it then starts to sink. So levitite is fantastic if you want to keep your builds upright and reduce the overall weight, thereby increasing the buoyancy of a build. However, it's not super survival friendly, and if you are looking to recreate these types of builds in survival mode, it's quite difficult to obtain. You need to go to the end, and then you can't actually place the block of levitite. You need to pour it into a mold, which is definitely suboptimal. So what can we use instead? Now, there's the base Create Aeronautics mod, and what I would very much recommend using is an additional mod called Create Deep Sea. Now, this is an addition or an added mod to the Create Aeronautics pack. And if you scroll down to the bottom here, we now have deep seas. Now, it's definitely worth noting that Create Deep Seas is still on a alpha release, I believe. So any of the information that I provide in here, it is subject to change. It's still an early alpha, so there are still things in here that are work in progress. So things like the values and whatnot, they might be adjusted in future versions of this. I would hope that the comments will be able to keep us up to date on this, and as needed I can obviously revisit this tutorial and provide updated guidance. So what Deep Seas adds in is a block called a floater. Now, the floater is fantastic when you're building ships because it has more buoyancy than the hot air balloon. It's actually designed specifically to assist in making your builds float. And unlike the Levitite, it's actually pretty survival friendly. It just requires some kelp. Kelp and wool, I think it is. Yeah, kelp and wool. Much more survival friendly and adds a lot more buoyancy rather than using something like a hot air balloon. Now, instead of having a 1:2 ratio, we can have a 1:3 ratio. So this is actually floating. I think we should be able to support at least, there we go, we can support 3 heavy blocks. Adding that 4th block, it actually pushes us just under the surface there. So now that we've gone over the basics here, what I've done is I've just got a super rough little wooden boat, and we'll just drop it in the water. Now, this will float. This will be good enough. You can add some basic propulsion to it and it will be fine. But if you want to take this any further than basically this, you will start running into some troubles. So for instance, if we want to use a material like cobblestone, and for whatever reason we are uneven with it, it will not take much to make our boat tip over pretty much entirely. Now we're lucky that it's relatively skinny, so we're offsetting that. As you can see there, 2 or 3. If we add 3 blocks of cobblestone, the whole thing almost tips over. Add 4 or 5, and it's basically going to capsize there. So what we need to do to prevent our boat from falling over and just making it more stable in general is adding in a keel. So what that is just some weighted blocks. So in this case, I'm using a heavy material, cobblestone, yeah, being heavy, wood being light, and that's going to lower our center of gravity and mean that the boat is much more stable. So if we wait for that to pop back up, and if I add a block of cobblestone to the side there, you can see that it's not listing as much. If we add 3 blocks of cobblestone, it's going to start to sink, but it is not listing over to one side nearly as badly as it was before, but it's not the most stable. So now that we've got our boat, our basic boat, notice that it's not riding particularly high in the water. So what we need to do is increase the buoyancy. So what I would recommend now, obviously use that to freeze it in place, is add some flotation to it. Now, when we're using the keel, I would probably recommend replacing this with material like iron, something that is super heavy, because we're going to be adding lots of additional flotation through these floats, or floaters, to either side. We can go ahead and add an iron keel. So this is just going to keep our boat from tipping over, and the flotation means that it will stay above the water. So super straightforward, just popping that on there. Now if we drop this in, it comes up pretty much immediately. And what I like to try and do is keep the water level just above a solid block, because as you can see, unfortunately, the second that you go underwater, the water will start showing up in your boat. It doesn't make for the best boat if it's half underwater. So what we can do from here is kind of just tidy it up a bit, make it look a bit more boat-shaped. Now that we've got the basics of a floating boat, we'll get into adding some propulsion. Now, in this instance, we're just going to be building a smaller speedboat. So Redstone portable engine, super useful. Okay, so what I have done is I have used the wrong face to build off of. So what I'm going to have to do is recreate a new version of this boat over here. Lovely. Bear with me 1 second whilst I go ahead and do that. Lovely, super simple boat there, and we've used a bit more of a hybrid approach. So we've got wood and wooden floaters. So let's just make sure that that is floating correctly. Now I probably want that to sit slightly lower. So what I might do is remove this middle row, and I'm going to add a bit more ballast to the center of the ship. Now, you could add ballast to the sides, but I would, where possible, always start with adding ballast to the center and then work your way out. So you want to go center bottom, like think about it like an arrow. You want to always start at the tip of the arrow rather than the sides, because it will stop it from floating. You need to be as precise as possible. So wherever you can, you need to really focus on mirroring and being precise. So in this case, it looks like I've got too much ballast at the front. I'm going to add a little bit more flotation there, and I might take one off the back here as well. Hopefully that kind of levels it out a little bit. Now, when we add propulsion, it's going to get pushed up a little bit, so we don't need to worry about it too much. But it's still sitting a little bit front heavy, so I'll just take off 2 blocks of the iron there. What you can do is just to fine tune it, I might add 1 block there of flotation. Let's drop that back in, see how that sits. There we go, that's much better. It's slightly better. Looks like it's slightly uneven. So you can see how fiddly this can get at times. What I might do instead is we want this to go down further, so I might do that instead. See how that floats now. I might just need to go with that. There we go. That sits better. I'm just going to pop on some wood at the front here, just to make it look a little bit more like a boat. Wonderful. Now that we're here, as you can see, our boat is full of water. Something that I would use is just a block to get us right at that waterline here. So in this case, I'm just going to go with some slabs. Now we are going to probably actually, I might turn that into full blocks, just because I suspect that we're going to need to run some kind of wiring under here at some point. So not wiring, but we'll need to run some shafts under there. So what we'll do is just expand it somewhat. And we'll just get rid of the sides here as well, and turn it into, and we'll just get rid of the sides here, and make it look a little bit more like a boat. Oh, looks like we're slightly uneven there. So there we go, that's our little boat. So from there, what we'll do is we'll start looking at the propulsion. So what we'll use in this instance, now you can use things like steam engines down the line. It gets a little bit more complex when you get into using steam engines. The first step that I would like to do is add a method of steering. So what we'll do for that is I will put in a helm. I might move that up by 1 block. Oh, that looks too high up. There we go. So that will be our main controls. I might just try and center that as much as possible. Moving down from the helm. Now obviously we don't want to mess with our ballast there too much, but we'll use a gearbox here. Now the helm is a super useful piece of kit. What we'll need is shafts as well. What it can do is you can use it to do steering inputs. So what we'll do in this instance here is we're going to run this back to and this is part of the create Aeronautics. We want to use what I use here at least is a swivel bearing. Now in my previous video, I was somewhat mistaken when I said that a swivel bearing cannot put power through. I will show a technique for that here in a second. I obviously was corrected there in the comments, so I very much appreciate the people who were paying attention, and yeah, I genuinely didn't know, so thank you for that wisdom. What we'll do here is we'll grab a swivel bearing. Now what we can do from the side of the swivel bearing, I think I might just get rid of that there. So we'll grab knocking things over, we'll grab a cog. So we need a cog to be able to inform how this turns. And what I might do actually is I might bring this up by 1. Now, when you're placing these swivel bearings, what you want is the padlock to be on the bit that you don't want to move. So, in this instance here, this probably isn't the most efficient design, is it? So we probably want this to be down by 1. Sorry, I'm making a bit of a hash of this. There we go. That's the correct placement that we need. Now what we can do from here... Oh, no, it's not. Go down by 1 more. There we go. So that's going to give us the swivel. And hopefully we can run the power in from the top. So the direction comes from the side, the power comes from the top. So what we'll do is underneath that we'll attach a gearbox, and then we will grab, I need the create simulated, and I'm going to use a submarine propeller in this instance, just because it's the easiest to use. What I'll do is we'll glue this here together with a bit of honey glue. And if we come up here now, I'm just going to repair some of this. Oh, let's leave it for now. If we come up here, we can see from the boat. If we move it to the left, you'll see now we are moving the propeller, or the angle at which the propeller is sitting. If you hold shift, you can go by 45-degree increments, which is super useful if you need to return that to center. So that will let us change direction on the boat. What we still need to do is power the engine here. So what we'll do is I'm going to grab one of these little portable engines. These are super useful. Now what we want to do is we want to feed this engine into a analog transmission, because that lets us change the rate at which it spins. What we want to do is we want to run it into a cog and then an analog transmission. Now this is starting to look a little bit goofy because it's a little bit top heavy, because we're having to compress a lot of this down. We can put, but from the analog transmission, we'll feed into a vertical gearbox, and then we'll grab a shaft. And then if you run a shaft into the top of the swivel bearing, it will actually put power through. So that's how you can pass power through, and that's running into the vertical gearbox here, and that's what's going to power our little propeller. So what we need from here is some coal. So I'll feed it some coal, and you'll see there our propellers are turning. So we do have a bit of a mess here. What we might do is you can use a casing. And if you right click on a shaft with a casing, you can encase it. So we'll just clear that up. So we've got a spot to sit on. Now, if we want to have some type of control over how fast we're going, what we are going to need to do is add in a thing called an analog lever. So where I'm going to put this is up here with our controls. I'll just pop 2 on one side, pop this little guy here. And then on the back, or we could do probably the bottom here, we want a, what's it called? A redstone link. Where is it? There we go. And if I put this, I'll just need to jump under here. I'll put that there, the other one on the side here, and then put the same item there to connect them both. Hopefully I can see that. And then I'll just replace this, and I'll replace this. Oh. Again, make sure it's as symmetrical as possible. And then if you shift right click, you'll see that it has a little white a dish there, and that just means that it's in receiving mode. Now, what we can do is when we add power, you can see here that the engine, it should be outputting, the stress units here are modified. So, whereas previously this was spinning at, I think 128, and you can shift click the analog lever, should be 128. There we go. So for every increment, the speed increases. So if we take this up to 9, you'll see here that the speed is now 341. Now there is a maximum that this can go to. I think it's 13, and then it gets overstrained. So max speed. Let's go up by 1 more. Yep, there we go. So and it's just that this isn't putting out enough power to accommodate any further than this. So what I use it for is I will just use 14 for a dead stop, and then shift 1 for max speed. So you've got power all the way up to there. So what we'll do is we'll unfreeze this, and we'll take it for a bit of a spin. I might just pointer and that direction. That's a little bit clunky. And the second this hits the water, it's probably going to start moving. Hopefully. Let's put some power through. Come on. Maybe a little bit more. Come on, little buddy. Oh, don't want to go past that. And we are in reverse. So what we can do is just change the direction at which that is spinning. And if we want to know how fast we are going, I'll pop in one of these little guys here. Can you face me? And if you're wearing goggles, you can see how fast you're going. So there we go. Should be able to turn. And we've got one more notch. So yeah, with this little contraption, we can go roughly 14. Pardon me, not 14. 4 meters per second, which is pretty quick. It's actually very maneuverable. This, you just right-click this, drag it left and right, and because we're moving the way that the thrust is being applied, it's actually by far the most efficient way. So as we cruise around in our little speedboat here, I'll just park her up. If we basically take the fundamentals that we've covered over here, all we need to do is scale them up. So instead of using the small portable engine, we're using a steam engine. It still goes through the analog transmission, and we're still using the propellers to thrust the vector, but what we would probably also do is we've got additional propellers, because the more propellers you get, the faster your boat moves. I would also, in this instance, I need to revisit the ship actually. Generally, I'd go with the larger propeller bearings, and that's the same as a windmill where you can just add blades to it, and that adds a lot more thrust than the smaller propellers. We've got the ballast down the bottom here, running along the keel. That's only a one wide ballast. In hindsight, this ship is really skinny, so what I need to do to stop it from tipping over is to add a bunch of Levitite. The Levitite pulls it from the top and it stops it from falling over. Like we covered in this example down here when we went through the demo, it's less survival friendly, so if I wanted to build this ship in survival, I'd need to rework it, and this is actually the first battleship that I put together in Aeronautics, so I do need to go back and actually update the amount of flotation. My later builds definitely have a lot more of the deep sea flotation or floater blocks in it rather than Levitite, but Levitite is a really good trick if you just want to add stability to a build and you're not too concerned. When it comes to steering, I saw a really great tutorial by another creator. His name is, I think it's Cement Concrete, has really, really great videos on his channel. Also around naval-based create aeronautic content. And one of the methods that he was using to steer his ship is by actually adding one of these swivel bearings here, and then passing a shaft through it, and then taking that from a vertical gearbox into a chain drive, and then on the end of the chain drive adding a propeller of sorts. So what we can do is when we control the helm, it actually moves the angle at which these propellers are pushing us forward. So as you can tell, this will actually move the ship left to right. So this is actually a really good method of moving. Previously, I was using what I call tank controls. So I just had 2 propellers and I was switching one off to turn to the left and then switching it back on to go forward. So 2 on to move forward, 1 off to move left, and then switching which one you turn off. And it's not the best control. This method here, with the swivel bearings and actually embedding the propellers in the rudder, it's fantastic. It's such a great tip. I'm really glad I found that one there. I didn't find it. I watched his video, and that was one of the things that he did, because he actually rebuilt one of my ships and upgraded it because my performance was a bit shoddy. So yeah, and then just cover it up with the copycat blocks, so it makes it less visible. You still got stuff kind of clipping out, and it's a little bit goofy, but trust me when I say the results are 100% worth it. So yeah, in future I might do maybe like a build video or something like that, and kind of go through the scaled up fundamentals maybe I can rework one of these smaller ships. But for now, that's kind of an overview of how to create the naval vessels using the Create Aeronautics. Feel free to drop in the comments if I have missed anything. I am by no means the subject matter expert. I am just enthusiastic about it, and hopefully I can share my enthusiasm with people who are just getting into the space. I know it can look a little bit intimidating, but as you go, it becomes actually pretty easy, and the community is really supportive. So there's probably under this video right now some fantastic comments with tips and tricks. So check those out. Yeah, thank you for spending the time with me. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a lovely day. See ya.